Welcome back to Fullerton College Prepress. This is Professor Ben Kiewit, and we're going to finish out in only 2 videos, PIA's Prepress Training Section 5.5 about finishing. So now we're going on to crash printing. So crash printing is a slang for letter pressing. Anytime you're crashing your letters into the paper or the other way around, rather than using smooth offset cylinders and rolling actions, that's called crash printing. A lot of times you use numbering done with crash printing because you can set up a mechanical system. If any of you are old enough to remember pre-computer libraries, I know I'm sounding older and older every time I talk about this. If you're old enough to remember those, have you ever seen the old librarian stamps where they turn a little wheel and they stamp you and they're able to adjust the date on the stamp as they do it? Because you can have that automated. You have a mechanical device that will automatically switch to the next number, tick, 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 every time it crashes. An automatic feed. I mean, there are Nerf guns that do this for shooting more than one Nerf dart. But for reals, in printing, you can have a numbering system that is mechanical and works on a letterpress, so that it will push a number and then switch to the next one in the sequence and push the next number and the next one in the sequence. And you can set them to wherever you want them. So that's for things like tickets, invoices, other things you want sequential numbering on it. Oftentimes this is to make sure that there's no extra, illicit copies floating out there. Something like tickets to a concert. Remember when there were concerts? Good times, guys. Good times. But invoices and other things. That way you have a unique number code. When you don't want it to repeat, you can use this and it will do it. Pardon me. Sorry, guys. So letterpress is single color. So you can't really reproduce photos or tint screens on it. But typically speaking, you can either crash print the whole thing using letterpress to do it, or it is expensive. This is the way I used to do it all the time when I worked in the business. This is fairly common now because full color graphics are in such demand. Demand isn't even quite the right word for it. They're the baseline expectation. I don't know of any clients I've worked with in the last 15 years who did not automatically expect full color printing. At this point, doing anything less than full color is specialty printing by special request. Typically speaking, you're going to be doing full color jobs all the time, in which case this last thing here, the expensive alternative, is what's actually going to go down. You're going to print the job offset or digital sometimes, although digital can do numbering, but we'll get there when we get there. That's spoilers for later talks. But anyways, crash printing numbers on something to give them serial numbers and all of that, that can be done on pre-printed shells, as we call them. You print a static part of a postcard. Sorry, I did a lot of postcard printing. I'm always going to bring up postcards, but you do a static part of your print job on letterpress. And because you can't change those easily, you make those plates and you set them up, and it's good to run. You're golden for thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of impressions, all the same. But you leave a space in the corner where it's going to get that crash printed number to change for next time, or a space where that address is going to get printed with a different system that can change every time. Anyways, so you set it up that way. Whoa, I pressed too many buttons. I am terribly sorry. Teacher fail. Foil stamping. Diplomas and hymnals. There you go. 2 good things that involve metallic foil stamping. I'll have to give you a separate video to show you what foil stamping looks like, because the embedded videos, yet again, I have been thwarted in my ability to show you them by the death of Flash. Goodbye, Flash player. We hardly knew thee. But anyways, so things like diplomas and hymnals and fancy business cards and other things that want to be fancy have a shiny metallic thing, because people automatically put value on things that are shiny and metallic. You show somebody something that's plain but well designed, they think that's pretty nice. You put some shiny metal foil on there and they are going to lose their stuff about it and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe how fancy this is. People like shiny metal. We have since the ancient world. This is where I would put my video of foil stamping, if I had one. But anyways, the process here uses a letterpress and a hot metal die, because you have to heat it up, to transfer this thin metallic foil across. It comes on a little roll, and that advances after every letterpress. You don't use all the foil, nor can you. It's a transfer thing where you put it up against, and the part that you punch with the stamp goes onto the paper, and the other part that you don't stamp doesn't, but you can never reuse it, so it's trash. which is another way of saying it's a kind of an expensive process. So other things to think about. Metallic foil doesn't always stick to ink. Ink oftentimes is oily and will not accept it, and it will just peel right back off. So it's going to require some extra attention and some special planning to make sure you're going to stamp on a non-printed part. If you're talking like our school's business cards that all the administrators and most of the teachers have, that's not a big problem. You have one part of the business card that the whole thing's plain uncoated white, and in one section you have the school seal stamped on there. No problem. But if you wanted to do that on a card that's already been printed the school color blue or something, then you start to have problems because the oil in the ink does not like the foil stamp. So you have to leave a space. Reversed means a spot that you're not printing on. You have to leave a blank paper where you want the stamp to go, and then you have to line that up. It's also one of the slowest finishing processes, so you have to make sure you have enough production time. You can look at the disparity here between the sheet-fed press is putting out up to 15,000 sheets an hour of paper just chugging out of your offset, full color even. But when you get to the stamping press, you're only able to make up about 3,000 impressions an hour. So that is 1/5 of the speed. So if it takes you a day to do it in sheet fed, it could take you 5 more days to do the foil stamping. So understand this and communicate it with your clients, because they need to understand and have a clear understanding. Sorry, they need to have clear expectations of what's going to happen in the job, or they're going to start to cry foul. Even if it's normal, they're going to assume that you're either lazy or cheating them. But really, all you did was not tell them the whole truth up front. Tell them the truth. Lots of problems can be solved by just giving them the correct expectations for how it's going to happen. Embossing is like foil stamping without the foil. Yes, waiter, I'd like a foil stamp. Hold the foil, please. Anyways, embossing makes raised parts of the paper. You have a raised metal punch. It looks similar to, although it's typically made out of brass, not lead, looks similar to lead type, and you punch from underneath up through the paper, and it pushes the paper up and makes fun things like crests and logos and stuff look really fancy. Anyways, this can also happen the other direction. You can deboss, where you push part down as opposed to part up, and you do that by pressing from the opposite side of the paper. Similar to the foil stamping, you have to have a custom metal die made. And so make some friends with the machine shop people, and maybe you can get one made. Anyways, that makes it more expensive because you have to have a custom. You can never reuse it. You can't reclaim it the way you reclaim lead type by remelting it. Once you've made it, you've made it. So make sure it's right, and make sure clients understand these things. So it's time consuming, it's slow. You do a brass die for each one, and making them adds time too. If you don't already have the die, you then have to get a manufacturer to manufacture you a brass die so that you can use it. You also have to choose how much embossing you're going to do, because the size can't be changed later. You have to choose how big it's going to be, just the size of the graphic that's going to be embossed, whether it's letters or a logo. So, and what the paper is also matters, because you can use softer papers for easier embossing, or have a harder time on bond papers and hard stocks. Uncoated paper does the best job for deep embossing. Coated paper, you can actually kind of damage the coated surface and it looks a little wonky. So uncoated is better. You don't notice the stress on the paper from the embossing. Die cutting, one of my favorite processes. We technically do not have die cutting on campus. We have a plotter table that simulates it by being a knife that follows a robotic system and follows pre-drawn lines to do your cuts. But for larger runs, or anything you want more than like a handful of, which takes way too long in that, there is die cutting. That gives you weird custom shapes. Everything in this picture are in fact die cut and not real things. That's not a flip phone, that's not a dime, and that's not a bottle of oil. In fact, all three of those items are flat postcards that have been die cut to look like them in those custom shapes. Here's a picture of a die and what rules are. So a die, how I like to think of it, because I always think through food, guys. I'm always thinking on my stomach. It's like a cookie cutter. We just went through the holiday season. We're now kind of detoxing from all of that. We've had our New Year's resolution to stop eating like it's Christmas. But anyways, cookie cutters or Play-Doh toys, if you have kids, Play-Doh. Those same kind of things. Those are like die cutters. It pushes in and it punches out what you want, and the rest gets thrown away, recycled, or reclaimed somehow. So on a paper punching die, you can see those red kind of rubbery, looks like erasers around everything. That's to make sure the paper doesn't slide or stretch or skid while you're trying to cut. That makes sure your cut's more accurate. It holds it in place for the cut rather than allowing for that kind of slop. It makes it much more precise. So the rules are the names for those little metal knife blades that go into it. They go into a custom cut piece of wood that has channels for all of them. Some of the rules are sharpened for cutting. Some of the rules have rounded tops, and those ones are there for creasing to make things fold better. There's another one that looks like it has little tiny teeth, and those are for perforating, for making tear-off sheets. All that sort of thing is done through a die cut using dies and rules. Again, I'll find a separate video hopefully to show you what a proper die cut looks like when it's happening. You can use a letterpress because it's already feeding paper and it's already doing an impact. So use that. Now, die cuts can cost a lot of money. We'll go back in a moment and take a look at this one again. It's a better visual for this because somebody has to make that. And the print shop I went to once in Anaheim that actually did this in-house, the people who make these are highly trained, highly experienced people who go through an apprenticeship and journeyman type process to become masters of their craft, because these dies are all handmade by someone who runs a router, not the computer kind, the woodworking kind, to cut the channels and to hand bend and hand lay in all of those metal rules. If that doesn't sound expensive, you're not paying attention. So converting. Converting means you also assemble at the end of your die cut. Envelopes and like cereal boxes are good examples. The shape of the actual box, while it's still flat, or the envelope, is die cut, but it needs to be glued together and folded. That's called converting. So it's only die cutting if you're just cutting out the shape. But if you're having it folded into things like envelopes or boxes or displays, that process is called converting. And also, just as one of those FYIs, word to the wise kind of things here, typically conversion is not done by those highly trained professionals. In my experience, while you have someone who's amazingly good at their job, who spent their whole life training to make a die punch, the people actually folding the envelopes and gluing them together tend to be more hourly wage laborers who are less skilled in what they're doing and are just kind of there. They're like warehouse workers. At my old job, one of my old jobs anyways, we used to borrow some of the employees from the warehouse we shared space with and subcontract them and pay them to come work for us whenever we needed to stuff envelopes and stuff like that. So understand that you need to make this stuff intelligible so that someone who doesn't think the way you think is going to be able to do it. Even if they are highly trained, they're still not you. So there's a lot of communication that has to happen with these custom projects. Anyways, one of those things, if you only learn one thing in my class this semester, learn to use bleed properly. If you learn two things, learn this. Oh, this is a much broader concept. Listen to the people you're partnering with. Trust the other people's expertises in their fields. Even if you know better generally, they know their machine better. They know what their thing can do. They know what it likes. They know what works and what doesn't work and what's working today and not working today. When they give you a layout to follow saying, please put this graphic in this part of the page if you want a die cut, help yourself out. Take their advice. Give them what they want. Even if all you're doing is helping them stroke their ego, that's still going to make them like you more and try harder on your project. So follow the layout that you are given. Ask them, in fact, don't even just follow the layout. Ask them what their machine likes. People love to talk about their specialties. Give them the chance to do so and listen to their answers. The learning you do there will help you become a much better pre-press professional. Anyways, that's all for today. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk again soon.